Welcome to the RSNA Radiographics Podcast. This is Dr. Refky Nicola from SUNY Upstate Medical University. The RSNA meeting today, we are talking to Dr. DiSantis, who is a professor of radiology at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being able to do this. You've been awarded the Lifetime Education Award. So I wanted to talk to you about education.
Sure.
And your experience in education. So tell us, what advice do you have for residents who are learning radiology?
Well, the residency time for those folks is precious. So I try to impress on them the absolute need for them to see as much as they can and to learn as much as they can while they have someone looking over their shoulder. Because the old saying, the days are long but the years are short, could not be more applicable than to your radiology training period. It is just the precious opportunity to tap into the knowledge of your mentors and to see as many things as you possibly can before that onus is all on your shoulders to be the master or mistress of the universe. So you have somebody guiding you, and that's why you need to do as much as you possibly can during that training period.
What's your teaching philosophy?
Well, it's actually pretty simple. If you make it interesting, people will learn anything. So they might not be interested in World War I history, but if you spin an interesting tale about on Christmas Eve, the two sides waved a white flag and all came out and sang Silent Night in the middle of no man's land. That sort of story appeals to everyone. And if you can bring that sort of interest into teaching anything, radiology in particular, especially having a semi-interested audience, you can get them to come along with you and learn just about anything if you bring them with you.
You interact with residents and medical students. What's been your advice to medical students who are interested in radiology but not sure?
Well, they have to do some sort of exposure with an externship or a rotation either at their home institution or someplace else where they might like to train. That's another thing. If you would like to train at some place, it's always prudent to go take a little externship there. And number one, you sort of wave your banner and people know your face and your name. And number two, you get to see what it's like there. And when the medical students are looking for a place to train, I think it's very important that they, in this Zoom era, they find a way to interact with the residents there and say, hey, is this a good training program? Or do you feel valued? Or are you a fifth wheel who's just doing scout work? And that sort of sense of soul of the program, you can't do over Zoom. So it's really important that they find a way to interact with those residents outside of earshot of the attendings. As far as choosing a specialty, as I said, you just have to be in a place where you can see what they do on a day-to-day basis. Otherwise, you have no database to make your decision. All things are changeable. Obviously, you can start a residency and change after a year. That's a hassle, it's upheaval. And so it really is incumbent on you before you make that decision to gather all the data you can.
You are described as someone who's born to teach.
Yeah.
How do people who don't have that natural ability become teachers?
Well, you're stuck with finding a teaching mentor, or if not a mentor, at least a teaching example. So particularly in radiology, online now, you can find lectures from myriad people on myriad topics, including teaching. And I think those are good to see as well. The guys who flip the script, no more sage on the stage. I mean, I think all that stuff is really great. Using new tools in order to teach. You're not just up there giving the same dry lecture, over and over again. But you need to find someone whose style you like, and then you can incorporate that. It's very difficult, I think, to read a book or to even see a video and learn how to do it. It's something with the accessibility now, you can see a varied number of people teaching styles, and you're stuck with finding one that you like and trying to emulate it. I wish I could say, yes, here's the resource to go to be a good teacher. It's just a matter of gleaning that from all the teachers who are available to you both IRL and online, which now is broader than anything from 20 years ago. So you really have a rich tapestry of teaching styles to choose from But there's really no other way than looking and saying, I like the way this guy or gal's teaching goes, and trying to emulate that style.
You mentioned finding a style that's appropriate for you. What was someone who you decided to emulate in terms of their style, and why was that the case?
Well, it wasn't a single person. It was when I went to meetings and I found, when I was in the audience, I looked to see when was the audience engaged in the presentation and when did they tune out. That was the thing. So my style, back in the day when I had black hair and more of it, was a much more sort of stodgy, sage on the stage, let me give you this data, style. And then the audience zoned out after about 10 minutes. So I found a couple of things. One is pausing is a very effective tool for getting people to come back. So if you make a statement and just wait 5 seconds, you snap them back to you. So that's one trick. The other thing is, without going crazy with humor, if you lighten the mood even a little bit, you will bring them back into the fold. Now, I'm very ginger about giving advice concerning humor, because you can go over the line pretty quickly, and the topics that we deal with are often very serious. Either cancer or chemotherapy,
sure,
horrible trauma.
Yeah.
So obviously you can't make light of the patients, but if you're able to lighten the mood of what you're presenting, even for 15 seconds, you snap the audience back. So the thing that I've tried to avoid and how I've evolved is to get away from that strict data, presentation 1, 2, 3, 4. We were actually spoiled in the old days because in the slide days, we had 2 projectors. So you were actually simultaneously showing 2 images, 2 full-size images. So you could put, a slide with a little humor or shtick on one side and your data on the other side. That's not really doable anymore. You can sort of split one screen into 2, I guess, which I do. But it was easier back in the day. But the suggestion I'd have, find a means of snapping them back by breaking your routine of data presentation.
I want to go back to, how did you decide to become a doctor? You said your parents had a grocery store?
Right. My parents, neither of my parents finished high school. My dad went to 10th grade, my mother went to 11th grade. They were the parents of immigrants from Italy. My grandparents didn't speak English. My father worked in a foundry in southwestern Pennsylvania, a brass factory. One day he just told my mother, that's it, we're moving to Erie, Pennsylvania, and opening a corner grocery store with zero experience in that realm. Put everything they owned into the Model A Ford, put my 2 brothers, I wasn't born yet, into the rumble seat, which was a thing that opened up on the back deck, and moved to Erie and opened the grocery store. So from that corner grocery store, they put myself and my 2 brothers through medical and dental school, which is an amazing American success story in 2 generations. Never was anything spoken about academic performance or excellence in my family. It was assumed that you were going to do your job. It was assumed that you were going to go to college. My brothers are 10 and 15 years older than I am.
Wow.
And so I was supposed to be Diane. There's really no question about that. That's a definite. But my oldest brother went to dental school at the University of Pittsburgh, and my older brother went to medical school. And I said, okay, this is the thing I would like to do. And it just sort of kept going from there, and I've been luckily enough successful.
So how did the decision of radiology come to your mind?
Well, I was in medical school at the University of Pennsylvania, and there was a radiologist named Wally Miller. Wally Miller was a chest radiologist who had a session with the medical students one evening a week at 5 o'clock. He would hold forth in these sessions. And Wally Miller just knew everything about everything. So he would look at the chest x-ray and tell you how many Diet Dr. Peppers you drank yesterday. He was that sort of just a superb radiologist, but a superb clinician. And he had this infectious sort of zeal for teaching you, so that when you got out of that room, you really felt like, I made a quantum leap today in what I know. And that infectious zeal is sort of what got me interested in radiology. I said, this guy's really interested in this. He really loves it. And he really loves teaching about it. And I said, that's a path I'd like to follow.
How has radiology changed in the past 30 years?
Well, you're talking to a barium radiologist, so there couldn't be any more change than has happened in barium radiology in the 9 years that I've been doing this, in that what we do is much less barium and much more specialized. Radiology in general has changed in one, I think, particularly major way, and that is with the advent of PACS, we don't own the, quotation marks, own the films anymore. So back in the day, the ICU team would come down to the chest reading room, and there would be the big roller board that had all the ICU films. And, because I was reading every day, I would know that Mary Smith had congestive heart failure yesterday, and now she's a lot better, and things are going great, or the opposite. So we were an integral part of the team on a day-to-day basis. With the advent of PACS, those films are now being looked at in the ICU, and there's generally no radiologist present in that regard, in that venue. So it's very rare now for me to see a referring physician unless there's a problem, we read something wrong, or some dire thing where they really need guidance. And that to me has been a sad thing, because I felt like I was much more integral to the patient care when I was seeing the team every day. Now, that has been ameliorated somewhat, because now with the instant messaging capability, there's no more tracking down Dr. Jones. You can just text him or her, or the instant messaging system that's set up in most PAC systems enables you to have much more connection. So I've still developed a cadre of referring physicians that are good friends with, and that I can contact on a daily or weekly basis, whatever. So there have been things that made that better, but if you're asking me overall, I sure do wish the referring clinicians would come down once in a while, because I learned so much from them about what was important in the patient care. What did they want the radiologist to tell them that was key in the decision making? And now there's a little distance in that regard. And I'm going to put my boomer hat on here. Our radiology residents, I think, sometimes think when referring clinicians come down, it's an annoyance that stops their real job, which is making a big list of names into a little list of names. I try to tell them we're taking care of sick people. There's blood behind that monitor. And you have to remember that. And when the referring clinician comes down, I think they jog your memory that Mrs. Jones is up there in a bed with 4 chest tubes.
Wow.
So,
my last question
Yes.
for you is, I understand that you started a program with your wife
yes.
To encourage underrepresented minorities to pursue careers in science and technology. Tell me first, why did you decide to do this, and how's that experience been so far?
So we were working with a high school student, a young woman of color, and she had a project that she was working on, and she wasn't exactly sure how she wanted to spin the STEM project. So what we looked at was, when do underrepresented groups drop out of STEM? So it turns out that girls drop out of STEM beginning after age 11. Their interest starts to wane. And then underrepresented minorities they don't ever get in the same numbers as majority. So we looked at the inflection point in girls in particular, and that was 11. So 3rd grade was where we had to interdict the I don't like STEM anymore behavior.
Interesting.
So my wife is a Pied Piper of children. And so she is able to get them to do essentially whatever she wants. So she came up with ideas of working STEM into ways that would interest them. So, for example, she did the chemistry section was make your own slime from scratch. The aerodynamics was this shark filled with helium, and so we were using his shape to describe the aerodynamics of moving through the air. Mechanical engineering, she had these little mechanical cars. She had a racetrack built, so these kids were modifying these small mechanical cars and showing how friction, for example, would change their ability to race. Coding, she had beads that had binary code, and you could do a necklace in your name in binary code. Mechanical engineering, she had Lego blocks in order to make rudimentary buildings. Thermodynamics, it was make your own ice cream and see how the cold, was able to.
How did she come up with these ideas?
Because I think she's a wizard from another planet. She just has the capability of finding things that are incredibly interesting. Robotics, she had a little robot that you could program to do breakdance. I mean, just all things that And the kids were just enthralled with the whole. I had a radiograph of a snake that had swallowed 2 billiard balls. So I mean, it was all stuff to say like, hey, this is fun and interesting, and you are capable of doing this. So if we could even get one kid in the 3rd grade class to stay in, you think of the number of times you could present this, and at least you're really hopefully increasing the pool of people who are.
It sounds like you have a lot of enrollment in this program. Right?
Well, we did it. It was the pilot program. We only did it in March, and the kids and their parents just we got a letter from the principal that could you do this every year? But the total bill for this was like $1,900.
Oh wow!
So it was not any major investment by the government to get volunteers, but the volunteers were high school students who needed their volunteer hours, and so they were happy, to come for an hour and a half. So it was really rewarding, and I would urge anyone who wanted to get involved at that level. They couldn't be more grateful for what they do.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I
you're
really
more than
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
Congratulations again on your award.
Very gracious of you. Thank you.
So we look forward to seeing more of your accomplishments.
Thanks very much.